You know what's crazy is with all the stuff going on about hip drop tackles, here's the stuff that nobody is telling you. I mean, they're all complaining, but here's what they're not telling you. Now, I don't have an issue with anybody who's against the drop top tackle or the hip drop tackle. That's what I'm talking about here. I want you to understand something. That according to StatMuse, last year in the NFL, there were 17,441 tackles. Now, according to USA Today, 230 tackles were hip drop tackles. So of the 17,441 tackles that were made, a mere 230 of those were hip drop tackles. Folks, that is 1.31% of all tackles were hip drop. Now, the NFL is claiming that you're getting an increase of 20 to 25% of getting injured. Meanwhile, with only 15 injuries happening, according to USA Today, of those 230, that's literally 6.5% of all hip drop tackles that happened resulted in injury. In fact, if you take the 15 injuries that happened as a result of the hip drop tackle, of the 17,441 total tackles that were made, that is literally less than 1%. We're talking 0.089, which you round up to 0.09% chance of you getting injured from a hip drop tackle. Meanwhile, the NFL is snowballing everybody. Now, how did they come up with that number? Well, I'm going to tell you how they came up with that number. It's really simple. They went off of, instead of the number of tackles that were made, they went off amount of players that were in the NFL and the percentage of injuries and hip drop tackles that were made as a result of that. They did not go off of the actual amount of tackles that were made, because that number significantly increases to exactly 25% when you do the math, predicated upon amount of athletes that can be listed to a 53-man roster every single week in the NFL, which totals up to roughly about 397 generally. That is clearly what they went off of. So the NFL is out here doing whatever the hell they want to do, predicated upon a BS number that they conjured up, and they probably are well aware of the 1.3% chance. The 1.3% amount of tackles, I should say, that were made compared to the totality of tackles that were made in the NFL. By the way, there were 52 ACL tears a season ago, 71 the year before. How many concussions were there? More than each and every one of those numbers. In fact, depending on who you ask, some will tell you that concussions are the biggest problem in the NFL, that those are the most injuries, significant increase over the last 10 years or so. Well, why is that an increase? Why? What's going on? Why are knee sprains and ankle sprains becoming more of a thing? Because it used to be hamstrings. Hamstrings were the leading cause of injury in the NFL. Well, the answer is very simple. You're not allowed to go up top anymore for a tackle. And everybody's head hunting, and everything is a defenseless receiver, and everything is about the quarterback and whether or not he's defenseless once he breaks out into the open, and all these things. Is he sliding? There's a million and one things that have contributed to the significant amount of injuries that are happening at the ankle level. So what's going to happen is when somebody goes and they make a move and they get by you, there's going to be one of two choices. You can catch him, you can dive, and you could go for the knees, or you could dive and go for the legs. And by the way, when you dive, you are going to be making yourself more susceptible as a defender to injury, because the way that they introduce the idea of tackling now, going head first, is actually more dangerous to the person trying to make the tackle than it is the person getting hit, especially if they're going to be getting hit in the chest where all your pads are. Now, anybody who's ever played football will tell you, I would rather be hit up top than hit down low. And that's just a point of fact. So while everybody's out here running around trying to decide what's safer for NFL players, they're full of it. They are 100% full of it. This is a bunch of people sitting around in a boardroom, which, shockingly enough, Troy Vincent, of all people, was behind this. Now, obviously, J.J. Watt, Richard Sherman, and a host of others weren't. Yeah, you had Kenyon Drake. He posted the video of him getting injured. I understand where Kenyon is coming from, but if you really watch that play, you could tell it's just a dirty tackle. You look at what happened to T.O. back in the day with the horse collar. That was a dirty tackle on him. And of all the complaining that T.O. has ever done in his career, he never outed old boy for what was a dirty tackle on his ass. Not once. So my thing is simply this. The NFL is creating the illusion that they give a damn, because they don't. Because the rule changes have allowed for poor tackling technique and for overexposure of other body parts, which is creating more injury. We're not in a generation yet where we've had enough time to go by to see if any of these rule changes have had a significant impact in terms of CTE. That's another thing. And then finally, the NFL claims that they took away the preseason, the fourth preseason game, in favor of, well, we want to help prevent injury. Really? Is that why you added a 17th game to the NFL season instead, and you're now discussing adding an 18th game because you're so worried about preventative measures for injury? Ask Terry Bridgewater if it matters about preseason or not. Go ahead, I'll wait. Ask Joe Burrow if it matters about preseason or not. Go ahead, I'll wait. In fact, a significant amount, roughly 32% of all major injuries occur during summer training camp. Why? You're out of shape. You haven't stretched the way that you normally do. You get out there and boom, injuries happen. You can tear something. And by the way, most of these guys that are starters now in the NFL that know that they're going to make the roster aren't even bothering to play in preseason games anymore. Seriously, if they do, it's the final preseason game, but that's really about it. Aaron Rodgers, if I remember correctly, didn't bother to play a single preseason game. First game out, he got hurt. They were complaining about turf. Oh, but, let's see, here's the thing. We got some dome stadiums, and it's going to be really hard to grow that, except for the fact that cryptochronolite can easily be grown, so I know that grass can be. Look, here's the bottom line. The NFL is full of crap. This is the perfect time for Cat Williams' everything. Gas, water, air, everything. Everything, everything. These motherfuckers have up everything.